Hi everyone, my name is Yu Nguyen and I am a Director of IT for Temple AIS. Welcome to your first ever AIS Virtual TD Workshops. So for this topic, we're gonna continue where we left off in our first workshop. So we continue with data visualization with Python. Before we get started, I want to remind you about some changes in our requirements for the TD tracks. So our President Chinmay already emailed you about this, but for those people who are already on TD workshop and already attend the first TD that I led in February, then you only need to attend one more TD. You can do it with this virtual workshop right here or the upcoming virtual workshop that we have later on. And then you will be qualified for the 50 points of the TD tracks. For those people that want to earn more points, then you have a chance to do that by first attending this TD workshop, and you're gonna attend another TD virtual workshops in order to get 50 points right here. Good. All right, here is our pre-workshop checklist. So first thing, you need to make sure that you have your laptop with you. These exercise and assignment we're gonna do cannot be done on a tablet or any mobile phone, so make sure you have your laptop or your desktop ready to go. The second thing is to make sure that you download Anaconda. So this is an open source where when we download it, we can have the data management applications in order to use Python and a lot of Jupyter Notebook for the package. And third of all, did you get access to our TD Virtual Workshop 2 folder? If you have not, I can show you that right now. Right. So now you need to go, all you need to do is to go on the templeas.org website, and you can see at the top in our homepage, you can see the link that can link to your virtual TD workshop. So when you click here, you will get access to our AS Virtual TD workshop for students. And in here, this will be all you need for this workshop. So the first thing I want to go over is the virtual workshop installations for those of you who haven't done this before and haven't attended to my first TD workshop this spring semester. So in here, you will see all of the pre-installation informations, including downloading Anaconda, and that basically what all you need for this workshop. And I put in both installation instruction for Mac user, and also if you scroll further down, you will see the installation for the Windows users. Cool. And then you need to download the data visualization.zip, which is this one right here. So when you download it, make sure you unzip it as well. And finally, we're gonna go to our guideline, which is the one that we're basically working on for this workshop. So I will go over some general concept with you, and then we will review the one that we learned in TD Workshop 1 very quickly, and we move on to our workshop. All right, so here's our agenda. The first one is I'm gonna tell you a little bit about Python, about Matplotlib, and about Anaconda, so you get a general overview of what we're doing right now. And then moving on to the first part, I will ask you to create a line chart. And this is what we already done in our first TD workshop. So if you already attended our first TD, you can skip ahead and go to the next minute right here. I don't know how they're gonna edit the video, but it should be somewhere for you to skip this introductions and moving straight away to part 2. So for part 2, we're gonna do pie chart, making a lot of like percentage and making sure you know why we're using pie chart. The third part is about a bar chart right here. And then part 4, we're gonna make histogram, which is more of like a range of data. And I'm gonna tell you step by step on how you're gonna make it and apply it to real life. And finally, we review, I give you some more resources for you to do. And that's all for the workshop. For today, Python libraries, we're gonna learn 3 main things. The first one is pandas. So panda, they have alias of PDs. This is just a shortcut for you to use it, so you don't have to write out the entire thing like pandas. And this one more of like data structuring and data manipulations. So this will work when you try to insert an Excel spreadsheet or like doing a CSV, a lot of big database with a lot of columns and rows. And then for the second one right here, which is NumPy, again, the alias is NP for shortcut. And this is a highly more like advanced and complicated than pandas because mostly work with multi-dimensional array. So this is how you're gonna do to draw 3D dimension objects and making sure that you draw everything like 3D, 4D, and all of that. And finally, we have Matplotlib right here, which is the data visualization package in Python. And this package will help you to get the result from the two packets mentioned here and turn it into a graph, a visualization, infographic, and so on. The next thing we're gonna learn is about different syntax within Python. So in Python, you have two main syntax. The first one is MATLAB syntax. So this one is focused more on for beginner because every syntax has been modified to a simpler versions. And this is easier for a beginner to learn. It's more structured. And the second one right here is the object-oriented syntax. So with this one, it allows you to have more control on what you want to do and how you identify your variables. And thus you can do personalization, customization with this. So this one would be for more advanced when you are more familiar with Python and how it works and functions. But in the middle, we also have a hybrid right here. So this is for like intermediate level where you pick one of each and then combine it. So this really depends on your choice. But for this workshop, we're gonna focus more on the beginner level. So we focus on the MATLAB style syntax more. Okay, so now we're gonna get you set up. So at this point, you already have downloaded Anaconda and you know how to get access to our share folder. So I'm just go ahead, I'm using a Mac. So I'm going ahead, go to Launchpad, search for Anaconda, open it up, and now just waiting for it to load and doing whatever it is to do. Cool. So now once you're in here, you will see that we have Jupyter Notebook right here that we are ready to launch. But before that, we need to download whatever we want for the requirements. So, okay, let's go in our browsers, do tempo.as.arch, and in here again, click on this folder. It will give you to this data visualization.zip folder. So once you're in here, right click, and then go to download. So after you download it, usually people will find it in the download options on your desktop. So in here, I already downloaded before, that's why I have the one over there. But for you, it should be data visualization.zip. So once you have it, click on it, open it, it will give you the folder name data visualizations. So for me to easier to navigate, I'm gonna drag my folder out to my desktop. You can either do like drag into the desktop right here, but for me, I simply just put it right over here on my screen. Cool. So now that you have that, go ahead and open your guideline data visualization on one side of the screen, and we're gonna open Jupyter Notebook on the other side of the screen. So in here, you go ahead and do launch for Jupyter Notebook. And again, it gives you a command prompt loading all of the things. So it should give you another web browser, and go ahead and move it to the other side. So in here, you can see that this is my directory. So it will be very different for each of you directory, but again, we want to get to the path of the data visualization folder that we just downloaded. So for me, because I put my folder right here on my desktop, I'm just gonna go ahead, click on desktop. Oops, that's too far. Click on desktop, and I can already see my folder, which is this one, data visualizations. And once you click on this, you can see we have on the Jupyter notebook file for each of the exercise we're gonna go over today. One is for line graph and so on. So let's open the first Jupyter notebook and have the line graph ready. So this is where you're gonna work on your Python skill, learning new command and new methods and all of that. So in order to make it easier, I'm gonna open all of it so I have it ready to go. Cool. So the first part we're gonna go over today is making a very simple line graph. And again, this part is for those students who have not attended to my first TD workshop. If you already attend this first TD workshop, you can skip ahead and go to part 2. So for this part, I'm gonna introduce a little bit about the line graph. So where are you gonna use the line graph? So for line graph, you usually use to track changes over either short or long period of time. So time will be one of the axes that you need for your line graph. And you can use this to either compare changes from one variable over a period of time or more than one variable to like tracking different comparison between the lines. Some method and attributes that we're gonna go over today, and this is also in your guideline as well. So the first one is the plot method. You're gonna use this one for all of the visualization we're gonna use today. So it will take an arrays that we already clean up and turn them to a line graph or any other graph. And the show method is when you plot it, you need to show it in order for it to pop up in Jupyter Notebook. So this is how you're gonna get the graph. And then title is to create title for your graph to make it more specific with more information and details. X label and Y label, again, very explanatory. And then font size, here is more of like a meticulous and then designing thing where you want to make your font bigger and smaller, and font size can be an attribute for all of the method. Like you can put it in the title to make it bigger, or you can put it in X label, Y label method to make it smaller. And then color or C for shortcut is also another attribute for you to change color. Line style, LS, is a different style that you can make your line to be. You can either make it one straight line or polka dot or like dashing kind of style. And then figures, this one is to manipulate the dimension, the size of the graph, making the whole thing bigger or smaller. Fixed size, again, changing size of your figure. And then self-fix, this is very important because one, you want to do your work. After you finish your work, you want to get your result, right? So self-fix would be the method for you to take the graph that you make in Jupyter Notebook and then put it out, so you can either use that, put it in your presentation, or put it in your like report and so on. So this is the saving figures. Legends, this one to create legend for your graphs in case you have multiple lines in one graph and you want to specify which one is which. So legend would help you make that. Now let's go back to our guideline, open up our Jupyter Notebook, which you already have. I just need to switch back. Okay, so now we are back to the Jupyter Notebook, which we should have downloaded all of the file, and go ahead and open your first line graph notebook. So in here you can see this is the layout of it, and then this is my note for you. So the hashtag one, and then all of the detail behind that is the note. So this is not code. This is just my note whenever we want to do something. And in this one, you can see Jupyter Notebook have different cell, so you can run it one by one over and over, either clicking run, or for Mac, I think it is Command Enter, or you can just click run right here. Okay, so now let's go to our guideline. So I'm just gonna show you the Jupyter Notebook, and then you can have your guideline side by side, so you can it's easier for you to track it. right? So part one we have is the Clyde graph. All right, so first and foremost, in order to make the line graph, we need to import all of the library to make it happen. So remember the Panda or the NumPy and the Matplotlib I talked about? So in this one, we're gonna need Matplotlib because we want data visualization, right? So let's import the library. Go ahead and do import matplotlib dot pyplot as plt. So plt is the alias for this whole package right here. Then go ahead and hit run. Oh, ooh, I make a mistake. It should be, there's no I in here, matplot. So let's go ahead and run it again. There we go. So now, even though it doesn't show any result, the library is actually already importing it. You just need to make sure you run it before you do anything. So if you wanna check, just like run it again, just to make sure. Okay, now in here, let's make a very simple line graph by doing the declare two array, and in your guideline already put down two random array for you. You can use those number or you can make it your own. It really doesn't really make a difference. It's just changing the line graph, but we're gonna have a line graph eventually. Okay, so let's go in and then declare it. So first, in order to declare a variable, you're gonna do x equal. And for me, I want to do 1, 2, 3, 4 for the 4 numerical values. And then you click enter. Y, again, declare it. I want to do it, I don't know, randomly. 3, 1. So as you can see, this doesn't really have to match up with the guideline and thing. Okay, so after you do that, go ahead and run it again. So once you run it, again, it won't result anything. But if you want to make sure you already run it, you can do X. And then you run it out and you see the output would be 1, 2, 3, 4 because that is what you use for X. All right, so now we're gonna use the plot method to create the graph between X and Y. So let's go ahead and do plot and then put your first variable in here, second variable in here, and do run. Okay. And do you see already the reason why? So the reason why I'm doing this is that sometimes you guys might have to do it and then it could be like an error on your end. So even though we have the plot method, we need to use it tied up to the PLT library up here. So make sure every single time you use any method in the library, you need to call out the alias for that library. So plt.plot run. And there you go, you will have your first graph. Yay, so exciting. So now let's make it better and enhance it with a lot more cooler features and meta. So the first is the title part. Let's go ahead and make the title. Very similar thing, again, do plt.title. And in here, I'm gonna do my first graph. Actually, my first Clyde graph ever. Once you do that, click run again. And you can see that your graph have a new title, like an additional title. So very similar again, X label and Y label. What can you do over here? Okay. And again, in the video, you can pause it midway or you can skip it and then try it yourself and then come back to the video. It's like a lot of ways for you to learn, and I would recommend you to try it out first before you go and then check on the result and then my way of doing. Cool. All right, plt.xlabel. And in xlabel, because we don't have any specific measurement right here, I'm just gonna do xlabel so we can see it. Click enter, blt y label, do y label, and run it. So for some of you, when you run the first graph, it could sometimes it doesn't show up because like either your Jupyter notebook is new and then like it haven't loaded in yet. So just make sure you run it twice and then the graph will show up. Okay, so now you see that we have our graph, but then this little thing right here, we want to get rid of it. So we should use the show method to only show the graph and not any like encrypted detail in the back end or like not in the back. All right, so do blt.show, and we don't need to put anything in it. It just, that's straightforward. Now you can see the X line whatsoever description is gone, and we're gonna make it like make it fancier a little bit. So now when you do figures, let's do it with so again, figure is the size method. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought right there. So when you do, you need to make sure you do plt.figure. And in here, you can adjust the graph and all of that. So what I usually do, I can do 10, 6 whatsoever. You spot. And in order to make it plot, you see the comment right here. So what you need to do is plt.plot. And then again, because this is a different cell rather than this one is one cell, this one is another cell. So you need to do it again, even though we already declared it. So we need to wrap it again. All right, now that we have our first graph, let's go ahead and put in more features for your graph to make it more like fancier. You can edit and change a lot of colors and stuff. All right, so in here, let's go into our figure method. This one again is changing the dimension and the width, the length of the entire figure of your graph. So I'm gonna do PLT, which again stand for matplotlib. And I just want to make sure you guys know why I'm using the alias. All right, so do figure, open bracket. Fixed size is an attribute that gonna dedicate and control the dimension of the graph and the length and the width. So do 10 and 6 because I want it that way. All right, so again, now similar to what we do before, we're gonna plot our graph. So this one right here, we're gonna copy and paste it back, or you can type it down. It doesn't really matter if you wanna practice and remember your Python coding exercise. But in here, the requirement is to add the color and add the line style. So let's add in attribute after the y variable. So in here, I'm gonna use C, which stand for color, equal. I'm gonna do it double quote, and I want to make it green. And then I wanna do line style. And in the line style, I want to make it to I'm gonna make column, right? Okay, so now, before we go on to the rest, let's do the show method by plt.show. And then you run it. Ta-da! There you go. You can see that compared to the first graph that you have a bigger graph because of the figure method you used, and now the line is green because of the color attribute. The line style is a little bit different too. It's more of like the dot 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 instead of the straight line like the first one. Okay, now similar thing, do the title but make the font size of 20. So plt title, and then you can do my first graph again, or like my second graph. And in here, do comma. Now add in the attribute of font size equal 20. Let's run this cell again by click run. Oops, what happened? PLT font size, PLT.title. Oh, I missed out a typo. Did you see that? Font with a T. All right, run. And there you go. You have a bigger title compared to the first title. Usually Python will give you a default number, but you can always change it using this attribute. All right, and for X label and Y label, I think just copy it, put it in here. And if you wanna try font size again, oh, before I move on, there's no difference between using double quote. For example, I use it right here, or single quote for your label and the string. As long as you use them, when you open with one, you need to close with one, similar one. Okay, let's do font size equal, I'm gonna make it very small. So I'm gonna do 5. And then this one, I'm gonna make it big. So I'm gonna use 15. And then you click run. Woohoo, so tiny right here. All right, so now that you've done everything, you fix everything, and you wanna save your craft to a new folder in order to make it to the report and put it in any presentations, then we're gonna use the self-fix method that I mentioned earlier. So for the self-fix method, it requires a few additional things to the method. So first of all, we need to identify the path that we want to put this craft in. So you need to remember your directory and just move it wherever you want to see it. And then you can name your craft like whatsoever, and then make sure that you have the craft, the picture image type, which should, in this case, we're gonna use PNG. And finally, we're gonna use a DPI attribute, which stands for dot per inch, to adjust the resolutions. All right, so in here, and all of this is in the guideline, so you can go in and then follow along if you want to read it that way. So let's do plt.selfie. Okay, in here, let's identify the path. So under your the data visualization folder that we download, I have a folder named picture, but then there's nothing in here. It is empty because this is where we're gonna put our graph in after we finish. So the path would be, for myself, it would be already inside data visualization. This is my first Jupyter Notebook live graph, and I just need to go inside the picture folder to put it in. So let's do picture for the folder. And now, since we go inside the folder, we're gonna name it. So I'm gonna name it livegraph.png. And DPI, which is dot per inch for the resolution, I'm gonna make it 300. All right, once you do that, go ahead and click run again. And there you go. So now if you wanna check it out, you can go to, let me share all of my screen to you. All right, now if you wanna go and check it out, you can go to your folder right here, click on data, oh, actually picture, and there you go, your first graph right here. Open it to make sure it have good resolution, it's look good. So we did it. Okay, so now it's gonna be a do-it-yourself exercise for you to do. So in the guideline, I mentioned that you should declare new variable and then put all of the variable in together, and you're gonna craft it and then make the color of your choice. And then I provide the array in there as well. So if we wanna do it, let's go ahead and run it. So in here, I'm gonna do sharing the variable. So do a equal, I'm just gonna copy it from the guideline. Let me share. Okay, so this is the guideline that we had, right? So we're just gonna do copy and paste this so it's easier and faster. And then B equal, copy the guideline, blah, blah, blah. We're gonna, and make sure if you wanna grab it, both of the X and Y dot need to match. So if you have 4, then both of the variable need to have 4 numerical value in it. All right, so let's plot this by plt.plot A and B. Ta-da! And now let's make the color of your choice. And then I recommend red because you obviously know the figure. And then make it a happy title, or you can name it your name. I think you need to here include your name in the title. So what I can do is plt.title Nghi Nguyễn, because that's my name. And then plt.xlabel, make an X label for this. Happy, because it's a heart. plt.y label. Happy again, because it's the heart again. All right. And now I want to change the color to red. So what should I do? Remember, you can always go back up and look at what we did earlier. So let's do, where's my plot? So do C equal red for the color, or you can do pink. I think I do for pink for the heart. There we go. All right, now you need to save it in order to submit it in the end. So plt.self fig, and let's put it in the picture folder. So do picture, and let's name it DIY1, DIY exercise, DIY, whatever you want to name it, exercise1.png for the picture type, and do DPI equal 300. Okay, let's run it. Run. And if you want to check it, you can also go in here, you do picture, and you have the first graph right here. Cool. Now that you have professional at making one line graph with one line in it, now we're gonna move on and make multiple lines in one. Okay. So now we're gonna run through this one pretty quick because you're obviously very familiar, right, with this one. All right. So in here, multiple line in one graph, declare it. So let's declare that one right now. So I'm gonna do declare variable month, Asians, EU, and NA. So for the sake of keeping time, I'm just gonna copy and paste it because I already done it before. But if you guys want to write down, it will be like January, February for the month, so on to December over here. And then Asian, EU, and North American, blah, 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 blah. And then all of this should be in your guideline as well. If you go to the graph of Candy Can 2019 revenue, so it should be in there. All right, go ahead and click run. Once you run it, let's label it. So first of all, let's do Asian label. And in here, we're gonna use months as our common X label. And for each of the Y rate label, or like the dot in between, we're gonna make Asian, EU, and a different line graph. All right, so let's plot plt.plot. So first, we're gonna do month and Asian variable. So do month Asian. And now add one more line for EU revenue. So let's do plt.plot month again, but this time, oh, I have a typo right here. You see that? Asian. And then in here, we're gonna do EU. All right, for not American, very similar, using the same common month variable, but here I'm gonna do North America. All right, let's go ahead and hit run. Cool. So now we have 3 lines, which is good. But we don't know which one is which because they have it right there, but then how can we differentiate between three of them? That's why we need the label method. So go ahead and label it. So let's add label in it. So using very similar one up here, I'm just gonna copy and paste because I'm kind of lazy here. And do label equal Asian. And we're gonna do the rest for EU and NA. EU and copy and paste. And then label equal NA for North America. And now since we're already here, might as well just add in the title and the label and the X label and Y label for both. So for the title, we wanna do total regional revenue. The X label, we wanna do months, like right here. And then the Y label, we wanna do millions. Okay. So let's go ahead and click run first. So there you go. You have the X label, Y label, and the title. But why does the label for Asian, EU, and North America don't show up? Because we haven't added in the legend method. So let's go ahead and add in the legend method by doing plt legend. And then in here, we're gonna do log method. So log is identify where the legend gonna be on your graph. So if we do 1 and 0, it's gonna be inside the graph and on the lower level. So it's like the stage of the legend. Well, it doesn't really matter, but I just wanna reorganize it. Okay, so now when you run it, run. See, you will see that because of the log attribute, your legend will be outside the graph, and then it will be 0 because on like the same level. For example, if you do 1 1, you will get it up here. So just go ahead and try to play around with it. But cool. So that is the exercise for multiple plot in one figures. And now, how can you save it again? Let's do plt self-fig. Add in the path picture, name it multiple line chart.png, DPI equal 300, click run again. Oops, what did I do wrong? Oh, multiple graph, PNG. So, oh, see, I only missed like either an O or an E. All right, let's run it again. It should be fine. Go back to your desktop and it should be there right here. So that is all we have for part 1. And now we're gonna continue to part 2. Hi everyone. So now we move on to part 2, which is also the beginning of our first virtual TD workshop or TD workshop number 2. So in this part, we're gonna learn about making pie chart. So I hope you guys are doing well over the first part and now you are good to go for the second part. So before we start, I want to give you guys an introduction about pie chart. For those of you never like heard of it before. So for pie chart, it used to tell a story and mostly relate to percentage. So you can use this to compare parts to whole aspect of a ratios or compare segmentation between different variables. And for some of the method attribute that we are using include 3 main basic one. The first one is pie method, very self-explanatory. This is to create pie chart. The second one is star angle. So for star angle, usually when you put the array into a pie chart, it would start at the top and by default, it would go counterclockwise in Python. But you have the ability to adjust this and based on your preference on where to start. And finally, we have the explode attribute, which is to cut one part of the pie chart that you want and then make it move further out so that it stands out compared to the rest of the chart. All right, now let's go back to our Jupyter notebook and open up the second notebook, which should be notebook number 2, pie chart. So you should be here right now. And in the guideline, make sure you start from here. We are at part 2. So in the guideline, you see that I have a table in there for market share in 2018 for different browsers, and Chrome is in the lead with 40.88%. We're gonna make this table into a pie graph. All right, moving back to your Jupyter notebook. First of all, before we do anything, let's import Matplotlib for data visualization again. So for every new notebook, you have to do it again at the beginning, import all of the libraries to make sure it runs. Okay, so because I already have the code in there for you, go ahead and delete the hashtag and you will have yourself a code to run. Nice. So after you run this, let's declare 2 variables, one for browsers and one for market share. So in here, you see that I start with Chrome, moving on, and then at the end will be the others. So make sure when you create the market share variable, all of the value need to coordinate with the name of the browser you have in the browser variable. So once you do that, let's go ahead and do matplotlib for the pie method. So what I want to do in here is go into under the command add pie method to create a pie chart. Let's do plt.pie, and then I want to put in market share because I want the percentage. And then for the label of the pie chart with the S labels, I want to put in browsers. Cool. And now let's do plt.show already there, but if you haven't had that, go ahead and put it in. Now you will need to click run. Voila, so we have on the variable in here with the data arrays. And as you can see, default in Python, you start at the top and then you go counterclockwise this way. And then order would be the rest. All right, so now going back to the guideline, we're gonna try the star angle attribute. So now let's try the star angle equal 90 in our Jupyter notebook. Inside the pie method, do start angle equal 90 and click run again. So you can see that Chrome now is not on the top anymore, but it moved a little bit at like a 90 degree, and you can go ahead and mess around with this one. And finally, we're gonna learn about the explode attribute. So in order to use explode, you need to give explode a variable based on specific the data in the array you want to explode it from. So in here, I want to do the explode for, let's choose, so I choose Firefox, and then the value for other browser, we're gonna give value of 0, so it stay inside the center. And for Firefox, we're gonna give 0.2, so it stay a little bit outside of the center. So you go back in here, name the variable part to explode equal. And now for every single thing else, which is Chrome equals 0, Safari equals 0. For Firefox, which is the third one in the array, we're gonna do 0.2. Internet Explorer is 0, other is 0 again. So after you declare it, now you're gonna put it in the pie method. So with the explode attribute, do part to explode. Nice. Make sure you close the bracket at the end. And once you do it, go ahead and run it. And as you can see here, Firefox already moved a little bit outside the center. If you want to make it longer, you can do 0.8 and
very far away from it.
So now that you guys know how to make a very simple pie chart, I'm gonna give it up to Madison, our Director of Corporate Relations, to guide you over the do-it-yourself exercise for this part. Before you move on though, I would recommend you to go in, do the exercise yourself first, and then going back and compare your result with Madison later on.
Hi everyone, my name is Madison and I'm going to be demoing the DIY exercise for pie charts for the TD workshop. So we just completed the one we did together, which was the simple pie chart. So now we're moving on to the DIY exercise. First, let's pull up the instructions. So today we're going to be making a pie chart that shows class level and total students. And then we're going to add our name to it, explode it so you can see that the largest section of the pie chart is really visible to viewers, and then we're going to save it as a PNG to our pictures folder. Okay, so first things first, let's make 2 arrays for class level and total students. And for this one, make sure you're naming it class level, because I tried to do this class earlier because I like to shorten things, but that's a reserved word. So usually it's best just to stick with the sort of naming convention he gives you. And then for this one, you note we're putting the quotations around it because these are string variables, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with. All right, that looks good. Oops. We want that to be up here, the other stuff. Okay, now let's go ahead and do the same thing with total students. And we are going to flip back to the numbers so I get them right. 20, 35. And these don't need any quotation marks because they are numbers, as you know. So as we did in the previous exercise, we want to make another array named part2explode and designate which of these sections should have the larger exploding piece. For this one, we know we want the sophomore piece to explode based on the directions. So freshman, 0, sophomore, 0.2, junior, 0, and senior, also 0. Okay, let's go ahead and give it a title. That looks good. And now let's actually sort of build our pie chart. Pie. First thing we're going to put in here is our numerical values. That's going to be total students. Next, we're going to put our labels in. So write labels, make sure you put labels instead of label. That's something that always trips me up. Next, we want to make sure we just have that 90-degree angle so it looks nice. So we're going to do start angle equals 90. And then lastly, we want to know what to explode. So we already made that nice array earlier. So we'll just put explode equals part2explode. All right, that looks good. We have plot show that it gave us. So let's just run this real quick to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. Nice. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and save the chart as a PNG. So we're going to go plot dot save fig, which I think stands for figure. And I'm going to name mine Collins pie chart because I think I already have another version of this. Yep. Oh, we want picture first, actually. Folder first, then add your name in of your chart. PNG. Good. Add a comma and then DPI equals 300. All right, that should just about do it. Let's run it. And we can tell it's saved because we get this nice little thing at the bottom. All right, so that was my demo. Thanks for watching.
So for part 3, we're gonna learn how to make bar chart, including one bar chart, multiple bar chart, different category, and so on. So what is the bar chart and what can it do? Usually you use bar chart to compare differences between group or category, and this can also be used to track changes over time. Some of the few methods that you learn for this particular part is I'm gonna let you through the loading one database from outside Jupyter Notebook. For example, using the read Excel method to read an Excel spreadsheet, put it inside our Jupyter Notebook and be able to manipulate the data from it. And then the next one is dtyped. So this stands for data types. Very self-explanatory. It's gonna check the types of each of the columns in your data set. Shape allow you to see how many rows and how many columns you have, just in case you have a very big database and you want an overview understanding of it. Head and tail method show you the first 5 rows of your data set or the last 5. Info is to make sure that you have the right data type for each columns, and then also check for no values. So this is a very important attribute in order for you to load data set, clean the data set before you visualize it with the Matplotlib library. And finally, similar to line chart, bar chart before, we have the color or C attribute to change the color if you want to. And also under the scope of cleaning the data set, you have to rename the columns or convert the data frame into NumPy arrays in order to make it work. So the rename is to rename your columns in order to make sure that they have a nice, correct format. And then columns is to rename not only one, but multiple columns at one time. And then the log is to load each column values. I'm gonna explain it and you understand it more when we work through the data set together. And values is to convert Panda library DF data frame to the NumPy array, also the alias of NP. And finally, for the visualization of bar chart, we have bar method to create vertical bar graph. We have bar H, which stand for horizontal bar graph, X-ticks and Y-ticks to provide the measurement for the X and Y axis. And PArrange is to create a NumPy array that you can use to make your bar graph. All right, so let's go ahead and open up your Jupyter Notebook for part 3. All right, now go back to our guideline. So first of all, we need to load our database. And if you go back and look into your data visualization folder, under data folder, you have the language ranking.excel. So this is an Excel format that I gather from the website called TOB. So in this one, it combines the programming language ranking for the folder. And if you want, you can open the Excel spreadsheet to look further at it. All right, so in order to create an Excel spreadsheet, first of all, using the read.excel method, you're gonna do, let's go back here. And before we do anything again, we need to import all of the libraries that we need. So for this part, because we have a lot of data analytics, data cleaning, data visualization, so it would be best for us to import all 3 libraries that we mentioned before, that include Pandas, Matplotlib, and NumPy. So once you do that, just go ahead and also do the Matplotlib incline. So this one would be used to make sure that all of the graph that you create would stand inside the measurement of your notebook and it's not like overflooding the notebook. So go ahead and hit run. Once you do that, let's load the data set of the language ranking. So go back to the desktop. The file name is language ranking.xlsx, and it's under the data folder inside our data visualization folder. So in here, you're gonna do DF, which stands for data frame. This is a very common vocabulary that a lot of data scientists, data analysts use when they interact with Python and analyzing data. So do PD, which stands for pandas. And in pandas, we're gonna use red Excel method. Okay, so in here, you need to write down the path for it. So the path would be under data folder, language ranking, XLSX. All right, go ahead and run it. So now to make sure that the data is already loaded in here, just hit enter, do DF to see whether it gives you the result. And as you can see, you successfully load in the data table inside Jupyter Notebook. Okay, so now moving on to the understanding data set part. So before we do anything, we need to make sure we understand every single thing in the data and make sure that we do it the right way, right? So first of all, let's check in for the data type using the dtype method. So do df, which is the data frame we import in, and use dtype. Click run, and you can see that it provides you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 5 column, which is correct. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then for programming language is object, because as you see, we have a lot of string value here. Rating and change is like floatings. So instead of being integer like ranking for 2019 and 2020, you have more of like decimal point that will give you the float data type instead of integer. So now, even though this data set is very short, and you can see there is 15 columns, and the reason why this is 14 is, again, the data array always starts with 0, but we have 15 in total. So to check the row and columns, let's do the shape method. So do df shape, and then click run. I just do shift enter for Mac instead of clicking the run. So it show you, okay, we have 15 row and we have 5 columns. The next one you can do is remember the head method that we use. So instead of doing the default, which Python will give you 5, I want to put in 6, so it showed me the 6 row instead of 5. And there we have it. And finally, do it similar for the tail method. I only want to show the last 2 rows. So I do 2, and now it gives me only the last 2 rows. Finally, the info method to check for no value and the type. So in here, when it giving back, so the final column here is very similar to what you get for the dtype method, right? But then for the info, it gives you the no or non-no values. So for example, in the case that you have a big data set and you want to see whether there's any missing values, then you're gonna do that. And if any of these columns have missing value, it will appear as no instead of non-no. And then you will go in and then you see it, either replace it with the average or like delete that columns or delete that row. It really depends on your project. We will go ahead and rename the columns now. So for some of you that already took 2502 MIS, which is the data analytics class, you will know that naming the columns is a very important part in each of the database and the tables. So when you look at our columns, you see that we have it is right for us to look at this programming language, but the better ways and more appropriate way to do it is to have everything lowercase and every space would be replaced by the underscore. So now we're gonna go ahead and replace the column to that way. And as I mentioned earlier, we have 2 ways to rename the columns. We either rename one column at a time, or we have the opportunity to rename everything at one time. So for the first method, we're gonna use rename method. In here, you can do df equal df dot and the rename method goes here. And open this, you have columns with the s, and then you do equal. Now make sure you do the curly bracket instead of the parentheses. So in here, that's is a very important point. Okay, so go ahead and put in the first column, which is programming language. And to replace it, simply place the column in between and give the new names for the column. So on lowercase language. Nice. And then you run it. So once you run it, to make sure whether you run it correct or not, do df and run it again. And here we go, our first column has been changed. Yay! All right, so now we're gonna rename every other columns using the columns method because we don't have time and we don't want to do it for 4 times. So let's just do it in 1 time only. So for the columns attribute, we can do df.columns with the s at the end. And in here, in order to change everything, you're gonna write the new names for all 5 columns. So go ahead and do programming language because we don't need to change that. But then we're gonna change ratings to lowercase, change to lowercase, ranking underscore 2019, and finally ranking underscore 2020. Make sure you close the bracket and you can do df to see how it will. And there we go, we have everything in order and now ready to go because our data set is clean and we look over everything to make sure we don't have any missing values, so we are good to go. So, all right, to make sure that we have on the paragraph, we cannot use all of the table that you can see right here, but we need to assign variable for each of the columns in order to draw a bar graph from it. That is where the log method coming in. So first, let's single out the programming language column from the table by declaring a new variable named programming language. df is the table that we're referring to, the log attribute. And in here, we're gonna do column, and the column stand for getting all of the values from the table. So we want everything. But for some situation, you can put like numbers in between to make sure that, oh, I only want from this specific row to this specific row of the table. I don't want anything more. But in our case, we want every single row. And identify the columns you want these are variable to look into, which is the programming language. And finally, do values. So we convert them to the NumPy arrays in order to use for visualization. It's just how it works in Python. So once you do that, let's call out a variable again to make sure we have it correct. There you go. Once you do it, you will be returned with the array of only the value from this programming language column. So now go ahead and do the same thing for all of the other columns. I'm gonna fast space here and just run everything as of now, but everything should be very similar. You have declare variable for ratings, choosing the rating columns in the table, put in value to convert the data frame to the NumPy arrays. Go ahead and run this. And we should be good to go. If you want to check, feel free to, for example, if I want to call out rating, then it should give you the array of rating and so on and so forth. All right, now we're gonna go into creating a simple bar chart. In order to create this, let's go ahead and use the bar method. So do plt, which stands for matplotlib, do bar, and now I want to see the different changes between those programming language. So the first variable I put in here would be programming language. And the second one I want to compare is the change, which should be this variable right here. And now I want to align everything in center to make it like better to look at and whatnot. And after you do that, go ahead and run it. So wow, now you can see that C has a better change than other with like 0.04, and other they have negative change because their ranking decrease instead of increase in the table. And one thing you notice that when you look closely enough, it's very hard to see all of the labels on the x-axis because everything is overlapping to each other. That is where the ectics method come in. So in this one, if you do plt dot ectics and attribute of rotation equal 90, rotation will give you all of the values that you want to put on the x-axis to turn it 90 degrees, so everything will be able to see from now. So go ahead and click run for this cell. And then this one is way better than the other one. So the x-ticks is a very important trick for you when you're working on with paragraph. That's all I have for the simple paragraph. In order to go on to the complex paragraph, I will let Andrew, our Director of Professional Development, to take over, and he will be responsible for the DIY exercise at the end of this part as well.
Hi, I'm Andrew, and I'm going to walk you through the more complex bar chart section of the workshop. All right, so when you first get into this section, you're going to see a table that has some student names and some exam grades related to those student names. So logically, the first thing we're going to do is just throw those in an array, or a couple arrays. So we have the student names array, and remember that all these names have to be in quotation marks because they're strings, whereas the exam scores can just be left without quotation marks because they're integers. So now that these exam grades and names are in here, we have enough to build a bar chart. We actually had enough to build a bar chart without having the names at all. We could just have these two data fields right here. So let's just see what that would look like if we just did a very rudimentary bar chart. So we're going to create this bar chart. What's it going to look like? Well, first we're going to use the bar function from the matplotlib library, and we imported that as plt, so plt.bar. And the two arguments that we're going to be worried about right now are going to be the scalars that go on the x-axis that denote where each bar will be on the x-axis, as well as the height of each bar. So the first argument will just be, let's just say 4 is an integer now. There's 4 things, that sounds right. And then the next thing will be the height of the bars, and that will be the exam scores, obviously, because that's what we're measuring, how high you want them to be. So we'll have the first exam, and then we'll do the second exam as well. All right, now let's see what this looks like. Well, you get one giant bar, and that's not very useful for anything. So what went wrong? So what happened was this 4 right here isn't supposed to be a single integer denoting how many things are there. It's supposed to be an array of integers denoting each space in the x-axis. So what we can do to fix this is create an index variable that holds that integer. So let's do index equal to range 4. And so what this is going to do is it creates an array that holds these values right here, just the values from 0 to 4 exclusive. So we can just pop this index variable into that argument right there. And just to prove that that actually is what's happening, we can put a 0, 1, 2, 3 in the second as well. So now let's run this and see what happens. Oh, I made a range. Oh, see what I forgot to do is I forgot to invoke the library there, and it is NumPy. So, and import it as MP. So now if we run that, now you got 4 bars. And it's still not very useful for displaying information because you have one exam score being laid in front of the other. So you can't even see the other one except for this tiny little blue sliver in the back there. So how are we going to fix that? What we're going to do is introduce a width variable that can determine the size of each bar to show both at the same time. So we'll set width equal to 0.3. That's all you need to do. And why is it 0.3? It's just because that is half of one of these bars. That's just how it is in the system. So now what are we going to do with that 0.3? It's not doing much good if it's just kind of sitting there. So what we're going to do is to just one of these bar chart functions, we're just going to add the width to it. And that'll just space it out just enough on the x-axis to make room for both. And then in the last argument, so we're going to use put width in the width spot in the argument, or in the function, sorry. So this takes the scalars on the x-axis, the height of the bars, and as well as the width of each bar. So width of each bar makes sense, it's equal to width. So let's see what happens if we run this. So there you go. Now you have a bar chart that accurately represents the exam scores for each student, but it's still not quite that informative because it doesn't tell you whose exam scores are whose. So how can we fix that? We can fix that with the xticks function. So let's do that real quick. So if we do the xticks, so that is plot.xticks. And the first parameter we need for this is where we want them to be on the x-axis. So we're going to do index because that's where each thing is, each bar is. And then we're going to add 0.15 to it. And why 0.15? Because that is just half of one of these bars. So as you can see, we're going to move it from the middle of this one right to the middle of there. So that's all we're doing with the plus 0.15. And then what else are we going to throw in there? We're going to throw the student names in because that's what we want to label the bottom of the axis. Yeah, so that should be it. Let's see what happens when we click run. So there you go. Now you have each student accurately represented on the bar chart and the scores they got. So now we have this. What else can we do to make this even more informative? Well, what we can do, we can add, well, actually this is under the DIY part down the bottom, so if you want to follow along. So now what we can do to make it even more descriptive is we can put your name and a title at the top. So if you remember from before, all that is adding a title. All right, so what we're going to do is just plot.title, and then you can throw in, just for example, your name, and then bar graph. And we can also add in some more labels for the axes. So how do we do that? It's very similar to adding the title to the thing, title to the graph. So it's going to be plot.xlabel, and the x label is going to be the student names, which we've discussed before, and the y label is going to be the grades. So now that we have all this set up, let's run it one more time to see if we can get a more descriptive graph. So there we go. We have the title at the top. We have each axis properly labeled. And so it's a fully functioning, nice informational bar graph. So the last step you're going to need to do to get credit for this lab is you're just going to need to save it, as you have with some other images so far. So if you remember, all you need to do is just invoke the plot library and then save fig. And then you're going to use the directory you've been using the whole time. So I believe that's picture, and then slash, this would just be like bar graph .png. So we have that, and then we're going to probably send the DPI equal to 300. This is kind of the standard. And then once you do that, you can click run one more time, and you should get that JPEG or that PNG file downloaded into that directory, and you're all good to go.
Welcome back. And now we're moving on to our final visualization, which is the histogram. So histogram, when do you use this? This one will help you to discover show underlying frequency distributions. So usually you use histogram to compare different category in range. And you would probably learn about this using the bell curve, or mostly learn about statistic of the p-value and all of that. So some meta and attribute we're gonna do very briefly on histogram right here. Similar to other visualization, we have our own method to create histogram, which stands as hist. And then the numpy random arrange is for us to create random numbers for us to do our histogram. Okay, going back to, okay, now we can pull up our final notebook, which is our histogram notebook. So in here, first of all, again, for every single time you start in the new notebook, let's import all of the library that we want to use. All right, for the histogram, we're gonna declare X using the random method that I mentioned earlier. So let's do X and equal numpy stand for np random and use the rand method. And in here, we want to generate 100 random numbers. So let's go in and put in, 1000. So let's put in 1000. So 1 and 3, 0 in here. And once you do that, let's create a histogram for that X. And I want to break all of these 1000 random number to 10 beans. So I'm gonna put in 10 for how many beans I want our histogram to be. And finally, you do plt.show in order to show your histogram. Go ahead and run. As you can see here, you will have the histogram and it will break it down to 10 different beans. And if you want to make it to like divide even more, you can do 15. Go ahead and run it again. So it will give you more beans for the histogram. That's all I have for the histogram part. Now, Sean Biju, our Director of Community Engagement, will help you to go over the DIY exercise for this part.
Hey guys, my name is Sean Biju. I'm the Director of Community Engagement. As Nee mentioned, I will be going over the do-it-yourself exercise for the histogram section. So after you guys have imported your libraries, we can create a variable x and generate 1000 random numbers using the random method. So to do this, you would do x equals np.random dot, I can type, and I'm going to do 5000 just because, you know, being a little crazy today. And then for the next section, we have to add the history method so that we can get the histogram and add 20 bins to it. And then we also want to change the color using the color attribute. So first we would do plot dot hist for history, and then x because we established x earlier, and then 20 bins, and then for the color I'll do orange. Okay, and then the orange, it has to be in quotes also. Okay, and then after we have that, we can actually run it and see that already we have this. Now we just want to add the title to it, and I'm going to use my name, so plot.title, and then we'll do Sean histogram. I'm a terrible spelling and typing. And then we also want to save it, so we'll do plot.save big, and then we want to save it as a PNG, so picture slash histogram, and then to save it as a PNG, we're just gonna do .png, and then after that we want to get out of the quotes DPI. There we go. And then we already have the show method right there. So now if we run this, boom, we have that. And then it's already saved to your wherever you have this saved as. So let me see if I can share the screen too. Okay, so now if you see, this is where I have everything saved, and it's under my pictures section, and boom, here's a histogram. All right, thank you guys.
Yay! So now you finished everything for our virtual workshop for today. Here's just some additional resources that you can use in your free time. And as you know right now, everyone is staying home, being safe. So it wouldn't hurt it if you try to pick up some new skills here and there, right? So the first bullet point, it doesn't allow me to show it, but that will be an online classes that you can go in and check it out and learn more about Python visualizations. And this course is actually on LinkedIn Learning, so on Temple, student will have free access to it using the TU portal. The second one that I include in the resource guideline is the real Python for the tutorials in order to learn more about interesting topic that you can do with Python for this specific language. And the third bullet point is the Matplotlib main page. So there are more method, more attribute, more way to visualize everything using Matplotlib. And if you want to check it out, go ahead and click on that link over there. And finally, DataQuest IO providing a link to a lot of free data set that you can use to explore and try it out yourself to make sure that you improve your skill in Python and data visualization. So that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for joining me. I had so much fun, and I'm sure that all of our AS Evo enjoy it too when we first doing this virtual workshop. We hope that this is a good thing for you to do and keeping you busy while staying at home, being safe and sound. The two reminders I have for you before we close up here is first, we do have resources for you in case you got stuck and then you want to help, you want to find some help. So in your own folder, you will have the AIS Virtual TD Workshop right here that provide our names and then when we're gonna hold our office hour and what is the Zoom link to access us. So we're gonna have it there being open and will be on Zoom whenever you need it in order to help you and assist you to complete this workshop. And the second part, the second reminder is to make sure you submit everything that we've done, specifically artcraft that we've done that save it in your pictures folder. So in here you will have the submissions file. Go ahead, go in here and then download it and rename it to your name, TUID, the date that you finish it, and put in all of the screenshot for each of the exercise. And of course, the first one, live chart, is optional because that's from the first workshop. And finally, when you're done, you can click on this submission link right here and put in your submission. All right, thank you guys so much. I hope you stay safe at home and please let me know if you have any trouble. We'll be here to help. And thank you so much. Bye.